Good evening, everyone. It's such a joy to be here. We have missed India, missed all of you, missed the joy and the devotion of walking the path together. And it's just really wonderful to be able to be back. We're back for essentially a few minutes, but at least we're back. And this trip, I'll just say a little bit, since those of you who know us know we sort of left in a rush with Swamiji to get off to Europe. We were recording television programs or internet programs. If you ever are curious, these programs are called Ask Me About Truth, and I suppose some of you have probably found them up on YouTube. But you can if you type in Ask Me About Truth on YouTube, you'll go right to them, and there are 108 of these programs, and they are, I think about 80 or 90 of them are posted up there now, and the others will come in due course. They're all about 13, 14 minutes long, each of the programs. So you can very easily watch one of them at some point of time. And Nirmala ji and I sat with Swamiji. You will not see us wearing this blue. Swami made us wear Western clothes, and he made me wear a tie for some reason I don't quite understand. But anyway, we showed up wearing this on the first day of the. No, I don't want you to look like that. Just, okay, find a tie. I didn't even have a tie. I ended up with his tie. So anyway, it was very sweet, and he had us ask him questions, and the questions could not be very esoteric. They had to be questions that anyone would ask him. Just someone that he met in a coffee shop might ask him, what is truth? How can I live more happily? How can I know God's presence more easily in my life, or more completely in my life? And by the way, we can turn that back on again, so yes. Everyone.
It's doing anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a disappointment. Well, at least it's not making noise.
Yeah.
At least it's not doing that, so little mercies. Anyway, the sequence of the programs was very free form. We would ask him a question and he would launch in, and sometimes he would speak for 1 minute, sometimes he would speak for 10 minutes. We never knew how long the answer would take, and when the answer finished, it finished abruptly, and we would ask another question, and every once in a while there would be a sort of a Kundalini experience as we were trying to search for the next question. We developed a little body language signal between us. When she had the question, she leaned a little bit forward, and when she leaned back, then it was going to be my turn. And if I didn't have a question, then we were both in trouble. But actually, as you'll see, we only about 2 times in 108 did we ever stop. And in one case, I asked the question, something about what was Yogananda's mission? And he said, no, we don't want that question. Okay, sorry, it's too esoteric, okay. And another one, something else happened. I don't know, the lights changed or something happened and we had to stop and go back. But other than that, all 108 of them ran right through. So it's unrehearsed. We learned that we would start with one question on a topic, and then a whole bunch of subsidiary questions depending on where he went with that question, and then perhaps other topics. But we learned early on that if we told him what the topic was beforehand, he would begin answering before the film started. And he would give the best answer immediately. And so we learned never to let him know what was the topic so that we could at least capture the very best. That was very interesting. So we did that for several months, and then we went back to America. And those of you who follow Facebook may have seen our photos pop up in Russia. We've been to Russia 3 times in the last 3 summers. And the way the photos come up, it makes it look like we're there every weekend, which we're not. But it's also been a joy to go there. There's a lot of devotion there as well, which for us growing up in America was a little bit unexpected. We always thought of Russians as very tough, very big, very strong, very stern or something, and they just love God just as much as anyone else does, and it's a joy to be able to help share with them. This evening, I wanted to just say a few words. We were going to speak a little bit about Swamiji, and I'll just begin. If you can remember back to your childhood, to the time when you were yay tall, like this, remember the posture that would happen where you'd have both hands up like this and you'd be holding your parents' hands, mommy on this side and daddy on this side, and walking down the street because their hands only reached down this far and you had to reach up to grab on. For a child, that's a very comforting, other than being held, that's a very comforting way to walk down the street. And if you think of the path, the spiritual path, so often we think that we have to walk with all this willpower and intensity, and we really have to just reach up and grab on to Divine Mother and Guruji and just grab their hand and hold. They will hold our hand, certainly, just as any parent will hold the child's hand. You walk across the street, you'll see mommy holding the little child's hand. Take that hand. Swamiji exemplified holding on to Master through life, through all the changes, through all the circumstances, through all the difficulties. We lived with him at Gurgaon for 5 years. We shifted down here to Pune City, where we stayed for a year, although he only stayed about 3 or 4 of those months. The city living wasn't really for him somehow. If I thought back on his life, at one point I sort of mentally did the math and realized that he had really spent very few months of his life living in a city all across his entire life, if you really think about it. He lived in San Francisco. Sadhana Deviji and Jayaji would have known him in those years in San Francisco in the late 60s and early 70s. But other than and he didn't spend that much time there because he was also teaching all around. But he was much more comfortable in the country somehow, away from a lot of people. I think it helped him to see Master's mission more clearly, to understand what is it that Master's asking me to do. And, Swami's example is a very challenging one. And we certainly noticed that living with him and working with him, because his energy, it reminded me of, if you get in your car and you turn on the engine and you start driving down the road. Now, this doesn't happen so often in India, but it could if you did it at 3 o'clock in the night. And you just step on the gas pedal as hard as you can, push it all the way down to the floor. You're going to start going very fast. And depending on the road, if there's a lot of turns in it, you're going to have to work at it to keep that car on the road. Being close with Swamiji in a way reminded me of that experience, because it was let's go and let's go fast. Not because he was in a rush, but because Master was trying to give a lot to the world through him. And okay, so we may be a little bit intimidated by that because we think, but I'm not Swami Kriyananda. I don't have 150 books to write. I don't have 400 pieces of music to write. My dharma is a little bit different. I have a family, I have children, I have school, I have job, whatever it may be. But we can learn from his example. And we can learn from the examples of all of our Guru Bhais around us to take the moment. Swamiji, yes, he was and is Master's disciple through eternity. And for the decades that we knew him, 65 years or whatever it was, Master's disciple. That's a long time. Okay. But still, it all comes to now. It all comes to this minute, this moment. How do we live this moment? 65 years can teach you how to live now. And the decades, people would, in the introductions of Swamiji, sometimes they would wax eloquent about all the things that he had done. And you could go on and on and on. I mean, it could go for 10, 20 minutes of introduction before you ever get him to the microphone. And he would get sort of uncomfortable with that because to him, it wasn't about all the things that he did, which were amazing and credible. It was just about Master asked him to do this. Master could have asked him to go sit in a cave, and he would have done that with just as much joy and devotion as it was. Master said, you must lecture, you must write, teach, edit. So he did that. That's what Master asked him to do. He didn't even want to do it particularly, but Master asked him to do it, so he did it. Each of us has our own way to follow the path. And we can learn from the example of Swamiji to take that path with full enthusiasm and joy. Swamiji had that kind of enthusiasm. He had that kind of enthusiasm for the curtains. Curtains. Well, a curtain maker cares about curtains, okay? Swamiji cared about curtains because he cared about beauty. He cared about having a place that was uplifting. So when the moment came to pay attention to curtains, he paid attention to curtains. I remember we had a little doorbell that would ring in our room. He had a button in his room and he could push it, sort of like the button that you find under the desk, and they call the peon in, from the other side of the office or whatever. Anyway, it saved his life one time, actually, having that button. So I speak slightly humorously about it, but there was a time when at 3:30 in the night the bell went off. He didn't do that normally. It wasn't that common. But when it happened, it was because he needed it. And he had a very badly developed case of double pneumonia and could barely breathe at the time. And so we got him off to the hospital. So the bell, I think, saved his life once. But I remember another time where the bell went off at around 2 in the night. And we were living close, our room was 3 meters, 5 meters away from his room. So we went out the door and went in, and he just asked us whether he thought he should have a skirt around the bottom of his bed. And yeah, it would be wonderful to have a skirt around the bottom of the bed. That's really good. But it was, I think he just did it to see if we would, what we would say, But he was a child also. He was a child of God. If a child wakes up in the middle of the night having a dream about a bed skirt, he might tell his mother, And the mother would say, yeah, sure, now go back to sleep, please. But Swamiji was always now. Did not mean that he could not plan for the future, did not mean he would not review the past. At the end of a discourse, he would ask us how many people came, how many books did we sell. He could be very practical in those ways. And he could certainly plan events for the future. But still, he lived today. He lived now. And we can, all of us, learn from that example. Whether we met him or we didn't meet him, whether you knew him in this lifetime or you didn't, come to know his consciousness, because his consciousness is very much present, and it's present in the acharyas here, it's present in those who met him in one way or another. It's present there in the talks that he gave on the internet, of which there are dozens, hundreds, and it's present in the books and music. Call that presence into your heart and into your life, and grab on to some little aspect of this wonderful mission that Master brought into the world. Because it was not just Swamiji's mission or Master's mission, it's your mission too. And you may think, who am I? Well, who is anyone? We look in the mirror, who am I? I mean, well, yeah, who indeed? But all of us can help in some little way. All of us can smile, all of us can love God, and all of us can allow that love to reach outward sideways. Swamiji had a very interesting expression. He said, most of the time when we sit for meditation, we meditate vertically, in the sense that here's my consciousness and there is God's consciousness, and it's about this vertical connection with God, asking for God's presence, reaching our energy up, feeling his energy, reaching down to ours, etc. But he said meditating horizontally, and he did not mean lying down flat. He meant, but to meditate in such a way that your energy reaches and touches those nearby you, those in the room with you, those whose life your life touches, and beyond that, all the way out into the world. That too is an important way to meditate. So sometimes do that as well. When you come to the end of your sadhana and you're going to offer your healing prayers, whether you do this kind of healing prayer or whether it's silent from within your heart, allow that blessing. Every time we meditate, there's some blessing. We may think, couldn't have been any blessing today because my mind was everywhere and nowhere. Nevertheless, there's some blessing because you tried. Just to have tried means that there's some blessing. Try to share that blessing with other people. Doesn't mean you have to go around on the street corner whopping people at the point between the eyebrows. Just try to help them to feel joy. Everyone wants some joy. Everyone wants some support in their life. Try to give them that support, to help them to feel what you have felt, the blessings that you have felt. And your own blessings will grow in the process. The only way you can ever keep a blessing is to give it away.
Well, I remember that night that the bell went off, and we were always so worried, It was just such a, oh my gosh, what's wrong? And such comic relief to have Swami say, now, what do you think about that bed skirt? Such a joy that he was all right.
Just come closer. Yeah, just come closer.
Okay. But I'm getting this Taj Mahal effect. One of the beautiful things about being around Swami was wherever he went, he made friends. And he used to love to visit the Metropolitan Mall in Gurgaon, and that's another whole story, how we started having a little Ananda store there at the Metropolitan Mall. But wherever he went in those days, people would recognize him from his television programs and would come up to him and say, oh, you must be Swami Kriyananda, I watch your show. And he was always so happy to have that validation that people were actually seeing the energy that he was putting out for Master, and it was making an effect. It was having an effect on people that was so good. And his whole life was all about giving Master to people. That's all he wanted to do. That was the focus and the heart of everything. Just sharing that vibration, because it's so liberating. It's so much, such a great gift to give people the techniques of meditation and give them an opportunity to be happy. And so for us, whatever happiness we have been given, whatever blessing we have been given, don't just put it in your pocket and think, mine. Give it away. Share it. And it just is like wildfire that catches and spreads. Let that joy just spread out. A couple of little things I remember about Swami is on one of those trips to the mall where I think he basically was just emanating his light everywhere. Just walking down the corridors, and people would either catch it or just be unconscious of it, but it would still touch them. And one time we were having a coffee, as he loved to do, after we had had one of these little strolls, and he sat there and he said, "This Western influence is very strong in India. I just wish East and West would meet at the forehead instead of at the toe." And he meant, all the rock and roll music that's come over and the Western dress and all those things that are not the truth. Wish that they could meet East and West at the highest of the culture instead of the lowest. And we asked him about the sort of materialism that we would see in India. And he said, "Oh, it's just a passing phase. Indians are too smart to be sucked into that." It's just a phase. Another time, I'll just share a couple of stories that stand out in my life because I was a personal assistant to Swami in sometime between 80 and 85. There was, I forget how many years, maybe 3, maybe 4 or longer years there. And he was in a very creative phase of his life. He had taken thousands of photographs from all over the world, and he loved to make slideshows to share with people on different themes. And so there was a lot of work involved in all of that. It was long before video was common, and so we would just do these things manually with slide trays and a dissolve unit, all of that. Anyway, a couple of things I'll tell you about stand out because I really learned something. And probably there were a million things that I didn't learn, went over my head, but being around him was always an opportunity to grow and change. And I'm just so grateful that I even learned a few things. But being in that vibration was such an incredible blessing. So this one time, Swami had visitors, and they were a couple of young men from the community there. They're no longer with Ananda, just so you know, but they were kind of mean-spirited, and me in particular, they didn't like. So I was always just sort of subject to sort of rude comments. And this particular afternoon, I can remember where exactly we were at Crystal Hermitage, Swamiji's house. I can remember him looking at me, but I don't remember what they said, so I can't tell you that part. But they said something mean to me or about me when we were all just walking down this corridor, and Swamiji egged them on. He didn't take my part, he didn't correct them, he didn't scold them, he just laughed along with them, made fun of me in some way. And I was holding the door for them, and I looked at Swami like, I can't believe you said that. And then they all went on. And I thought, I could burst into tears, or I could get really mad, or I could just, throw a fit of some kind. So I didn't follow them. I went out to the garden at Crystal Hermitage, and I processed all this for a couple of minutes. And then I thought, I'm just going to ignore that. I'm going to pretend that just didn't happen. And I went back in and I continued the meeting, and it was all fine. And Swami was watching me the whole time. And then afterwards, he said, good for you. So I knew it was a test. He was trying to make me stronger, trying to make me not care about anything except that connection with God. Be free in your heart. And don't think that anything in this world happens on purpose just to be mean to you. Things happen in this world so that you can rise above them, so that you can stay centered. Just like he was giving me that little test, Divine Mother is giving us little tests every day. Will you still remember me, she says to us, or will you be pulled out of your center into all kinds of commotion? Just be in this center all the time and relate everything back to her. Everything. I remember another time that Swamiji had this inspiration that, and I don't know all the details. You could ask Jai about this sometime. I'm sure he knows all about it. But Swami wanted to incorporate Ananda village as its own town. And he went through lots and lots of meetings and going to the county and trying to work in this direction. And then one day it became clear that that wasn't trying to happen, and he turned on a dime. He changed his mind completely. He completely let it go. Whatever Divine Mother wants was all he ever wanted. Do we have time for one more story?
Yes.
No. You sure?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me think of one. There was a time, okay, this is another lesson that I learned. And they are hard won, these lessons. So as you look back over your life and you see what you have learned, appreciate it. Appreciate that you have come as far as you have. And know that what stretches out before you is a path of joy. We learn these things life after life after life, and it's all towards samadhi. That's all we're working towards. That is our destiny, every soul's destiny. So just as we go through school and we learn our lessons and we make progress, know that we are making progress every minute, whether we're conscious of it or not. Just every minute, keep offering yourself more to God, and growth will come. So this time, I was working with another person, a young man, and he was driving me crazy. He had so much ego, at least I thought he did, so much ego that he was flamboyant. He referred everything to himself. He was the creator and great mind of everything that we were doing, even though I was doing all the work. And he thought he was so much better than I was. So this one day, we were both, just the two of us with Swami in the evening, and we were having a meeting about our job. And Swami, as we were saying goodbye to him and saying goodnight, Swami was saying to him, "You are so good, and everything, you're just the great, this and that and the other thing, and we just couldn't do this work without you." He was just laying it on. And I was thinking, what are you talking about? You know this person, how can you think that way? But I decided, okay, I'm going to go along with this. And I patted this person on the back and I said, "You're the best." Just let him have it, let him just feel really good about everything. And that was it. We said good night and we went our separate ways. As soon as I walked in the door of my house, the phone rang. And Swami said, "So how are you?" And I said, "I'm fine." And he said, "I didn't really mean that he was better than you." And I said, "Swami, there are millions of people better than me, and millions of people who aren't as good as me. I just do the best I can do." And he said, "Yes, that's all we can ever do. Don't compare yourself to anyone, and don't judge anyone either." He was testing me for how I was judging this person every day, because he was really driving me crazy. It's okay. We're on a spectrum. We're growing in our own way, each of us. We really can't judge where anyone else is on the spiritual path. All we can do is love them. We don't expect a little child to know calculus perfectly. They're not ready for that. Their minds aren't ready for that. I couldn't expect this person to be egoless. He wasn't ready for that. His heart wasn't ready. So why is it my business to tell him how he should be? All I could do was love him. And that's what Swami was trying to teach us, all of us. Just love people. God bless you.